So hello everyone and welcome back to Deercast. You will probably recognise our guest, or my guest I should say, because I've not got Harry with me this evening, as Paul Hill from Corinium Rifle Range. And the purpose of today's video and podcast, because I think we're going to try and put this out as a little bit of both potentially, is really a debrief or a rundown on my DSC2, because for those of you that haven't seen all of my ramblings online and on YouTube and everywhere else, Paul was my accredited witness and mentor throughout the process. So you need no further introduction, I think, after that, Paul, and the fact you've already been on the podcast and one of our most popular episodes, I should add as well. So welcome back.
Good to be here again.
Yeah. So for anyone that's not seen the video that will have come out by the time this gets released, but we haven't released it by the point that Paul and I are recording, anyone that is watching this will know that I did end up passing my DSC2 by some strange stroke of luck, probably in no part thanks to Paul, who put me onto an absolutely beautiful roebuck.
Well, I wouldn't say it's luck, Tom. The thing with level 2 is, as I always say to prospective candidates, is make sure you're ready. And when we do a level 1, we have people who leave a level 1, they are so hyped up with deer, they love the whole thing, they're into it, they want to do everything possible, get as many qualifications as possible, and they go away from level 1, ring DMQ, sign up, and they're ready to go level 2. And I do make a point after every level 1 course of saying to people, get some experience under your belt. Go and shoot a few animals. Go and shoot 20 or 30 animals, and then come to us and then say, I'm ready. Get a mentor, get somebody who is an approved witness, perhaps, somebody who can give some guidance, and then sign up for it and say, I'm ready. I was discussing this with your assessor, and I'm an assessor myself, so we're kind of singing from the same song sheet, these guys and I. And when he rang me about your assessment, we were chatting about various things, and we've all had the same things. We have two categories of people who come to us for approved stalks, effectively approved witness stalks. Those people who are ready for it and they've signed up. They signed up a couple of months ago. They're ready. They go out, tick the box, get it done. And then we have the other probably 95% who have signed up for it probably, I don't know, 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago. They've rung DMQ for an extension because they've done nothing, and all of a sudden they're timing out. They're getting to the 3 years kind of probationary period, as it were, not probationary period, but the kind of time span it before it runs out. And they're saying, can I do a stalk in the next week before it runs out? And the answer is, well, what have you done in the last 2 or 3 years? Why have you been hanging around? And I think you were, in all fairness, until I spoke to you about it, you were in that latter category where you'd hung on and hung on and hung on, and I pushed you. So let's just get it done, get it out of the way. You're an effective stalker. You're culling animals. You're out there doing it, and this is a breeze for you. You've done it enough now to make it a breeze. What we struggle with more is people who have shot a couple of animals. They want to do level 2, and they haven't been filled in on the requirements of what a level 2 stalk really is. And it's not difficult. It's not rocket science. It's just experience, and that's all it is.
Yeah, no, I definitely. I'm glad that I didn't rush out from my DSC1 straight into my DSC2, because I would have made a hell of a mess of it. I was definitely not ready at all. So I'm glad I did that, and I'm glad you did sort of encourage me to get on with it, because I can't remember what prompted me to register for my DSC2 in the first place, but it was probably a good year ago. And I think I had the best of intentions of doing it in the doe season, because I thought, well, there'll be loads of deer around, it'll be really easy. And I guess I just got really preoccupied with culling deer, and it was only towards like the very end of the doe season that I was suddenly like, oh God, I'm actually running out of time to try and fit this in. And I think you and I spoke and tried to get it in, and probably my fault for whatever reason, we just couldn't fit it in. So ended up being a roebuck instead.
I think people are going to focus a little bit more and understand the requirements for training. Level 1 is and has always been the industry standard. We had a very, very, very experienced vet with us yesterday who's been in the industry a lot longer than I. He lectures he's been lecturing on BDS Level 1 courses for 40 years. He was a kind of a primary founder and lecturer, presenter on the original deer stalking. I can't remember the point now. DSC2. I can't remember the old deer stalking certificate. Which goes back dates 1990 something or other. And John has been coming to us the past 3 or 4 years now and kind of getting back into it. He's had some health issues, but he's gone away and he's wanted to do his level 2. And he's been told by the BDF, rightly so, that because he didn't upgrade his certificate from the original stalking qualification to the current level 1, that he's no longer eligible for game meat hygiene status. This is a guy who's a qualified vet of 50
Yeah.
years. He knows the internal anatomy of a deer better than 99% of stalkers. He's been told he's got to do level 2. He came to me yesterday and said, "Can I help?" Now I've got to go away and have a conversation with DMQ and say, what can we do to help this individual? So people have got to understand that level 2 is there. It is a qualification. It is an industry standard, as is level 1. But they have to be prepared for it when they actually come to it. As I just said, we have people who leave level 1 and they are absolutely red hot keen. And hats off to them. All kudos to them. It's great. We love seeing these people leaving level 1 course absolutely pumped up, keen as mustard. It's great, but they have to just check themselves a little bit and say, what do I need to do to actually gain my level 2 status? And as importantly, do I need it? I think now there's more. Now the emphasis has been changed from level 1 to level 2, as in the game meat hygiene status. You don't get trained hunting with level 1 anymore. You do with level 2. I think that's a really, really good thing. There are plenty of people in the industry who think it's a bad thing. I personally don't. You can't tell me that a really keen individual who has never shot a deer, maybe never even shot a centerfire rifle before, after 2 or 3 hours presentations on a level 1 course, is qualified to go out, shoot a deer, and certify it fit to enter the human food chain. That's why it was done, and it's not. We've had a bit of a kickback from a couple of organisations who still do the large game meat handling course and give people that trained hunter status. It's wrong, entirely wrong. What we've done is we've tried to strengthen this qualification. We've tried to give it some more kudos in the industry. And let's be fair, it is the only industry accredited and approved qualification, level 1 and level 2. It's what the Forestry Commission use. It's what everybody recognises. And I hate to say it, but it's what police forces sometimes use. Wrongly so, in my opinion. But it's what we've got, and we have to make sure that we adhere to those standards and make sure that people are up to those standards when we put them through it.
Yeah. And I think if you draw the parallel with hunting qualifications in other countries, particularly in Europe, because I had some Danish friends come and stay, I think it was back in March, and we were talking about other hunting qualifications out there. They're they have to do them if they want to go out hunting, and B, so regardless of whether they're selling them into the human food chain or not, and B, they're much more involved than DSC1. If you incorporated DSC1 and DSC2, you might be sort of somewhere comparable.
I think, in all fairness, Tom, if you incorporated both of those, it doesn't meet the minimum standards of a lot of those countries. Take Germany, for example, the Jagdschein. You're looking at a month of your life, or 2-year course, I think it is, and we're into not the tens of thousands of euros, but we're close to 10,000 euros, I think, 8,000 or 9,000 euros to actually take that course to get your hunter certificate. We've got a client who's been coming to us quite recently, but he's an old client of ours. Not old as in age, but he's been coming for a long time, and he lives in Norway. And the shooting test is extremely rigorous. And I honestly can hand on heart say that I have got very few members who would pass that shooting test first time round without a good deal of practice. It's difficult shooting positions, and they're not positions that we would normally use in this country, because we're all for putting people in positions that maximize the chance of a clean kill, whereas they're looking at positions that are compromising the stability and learning from it, which is a good thing. It leads to practice and therefore better marksmanship. But overall, our qualifications in this country, I think, are fairly straightforward, and I won't say dumbed down, because that's definitely not the right term for it. But we've tried to simplify them, certainly with the level 1, and give people guidance to go on to level 2 to push them into making more of themselves as an effective stalker. If you're shooting for own consumption, nobody minds. Nobody really cares. If you want to poison yourself and your family, it's entirely up to you. But when it comes to the food industry, and when we're governed by the Food Standards Agency, we need to have a higher level of qualifications in place.
And I think not just for that reason, and this is particularly topical given what's going to happen in a matter of days in terms of the election. And if you look at the different parties' manifestos, none of them are particularly in favour, apart from possibly the Tories and reform, none of them are particularly in favour of field sports. And so under whatever guise of party or colour that gets voted in, I can see there being a restriction on field sports, but B, a restriction on field sports for those that can't necessarily justify it as strongly as some others. So I think, to my mind, deer stalking probably sits at the higher end of the ethical tree, and I'm probably going to upset some people by saying that, in terms of if you try to compare that to, say, pheasant shooting, driven commercial pheasant shooting, it's pretty tough to justify one compared to the other. But even then, within deer stalking, if we as the industry can all turn around and go, we have all voluntarily done a high level of certification, so therefore what we do is both ethical and safe, I think that stands miles apart from if none of us had done anything at all and we're all just charging around the countryside completely untrained.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. A couple of years ago, the DEFRA consultation put forward, and in it was there were several very worrying statements put forward, but there was one in particular that struck me, and it mentioned a higher level of mandatory training. And that really does put the onus, and it throws whichever party a freebie, as it were, to beat us over the head with. As you rightly say, we're not a popular pastime. The good thing about deer stalking or deer management over commercial pheasant shooting, game shooting, what have you, is we have a moral high ground. We do. We have, and we have to stand up for that. You know, there are deer numbers in vast excesses in most parts of this country, and the only way of dealing with those is culling. Like it's not a nice way of doing it sometimes for people. I get that. You know, we're not out there forcing our agenda onto other people. It's very much vice versa. But when a government body talks about higher training or high levels of training, we have to be very aware and think about the undertones to what they're saying, rather than just pinning our hopes on level one. Level one is a great start. Don't get me wrong. Every stalker or every person thinking of stalking should be doing the level one. It's the industry approved standard. But to go on into that and to be able to stand head and shoulders above the rest, I think level two is where we need to be looking. To get that advanced levels, you know, we're talking about going out, doing management plans, cull plans, etc., and getting it done as effective stalkers. You know, it's no good shooting 5 deer a year off an estate that needs 100 deer a year culling. It's not going to tick the boxes. You and I have discussed this already about farm incomes. You know, come 2027, as we've rightly said, it's going to sort the chaff from the wheat without a shadow of a doubt. And farmers will be looking for alternative incomes. They're looking for schemes where they may be required to put in place effective deer management plans. And those deer management plans aren't going to be coming from the recreational stalker who shoots 5 deer a year off the estate. It's going to be coming from an approved body, an approved business who can go on there and do a proper assessment of what needs to be taken off the land. And that will require effective management. And I think I alluded this in the last podcast, that effective stalking doesn't really cover recreational stalking. And we have to be honest with ourselves. You know, that person who's shooting 4 or 5 deer for the freezer every year is a wonderful asset, but it's not the asset that we need in circumstances where we have to get a job done. And I think there could well be, and this is reading between the lines, and this is me kind of spouting off and saying what I believe. I believe that localized management plans could be put in place to reduce numbers significantly, but in order to get on those reduced or on those management plans, we could well be looking at a higher level of training. And I think there we have to be looking at people who are level 2 minimum.
Which is interesting you mentioned the DEFRA consultation, because I think that is what prompted me to sign up for my DSC2, because I think I read into it read between the lines possibly the same sort of statement and thought, I can see what's coming here. A bit like, I can't remember however many years ago it was, where I read somewhere about copper or non-lead ammunition, and I thought, I can just see where this is coming, and I thought I'd just rather be ahead of this than behind this. And am I right in thinking, because Basque now have a competent stalkers register, don't they?
They
And
do.
is and in order to be on that, you have to be DSC2, don't you? Or have I made that up?
I couldn't tell you, if I'm honest with you. I'm not 100% certain. I discussed this project with Nick Lane from BSC a number of months ago. In fact, I think it was about 18 months ago. And the basis for it was to enable better access for keen recreational stalkers to actually get some more experience on the ground with more experienced stalkers, to get them up to level 2 standards, and to help people, because not everybody's got a few hundred acres to go out and shoot deer on. As much as anything else, I don't know what the percentage is, but there's quite a high proportion of stalkers out there, recreational stalkers, who don't have access to their own ground. We're constantly being asked, who do you recommend? Where can I go and shoot some deer? And I've got, a few guys who we've known through the industry, who we've either trained up ourselves, who've got large areas of land, or people who've approached us and said, I can take on a few extra hands this year and get some people out stalking, which is great. But the industry needs more people who are willing to guide people and to help people get up the ladder and onto that next step, so they're confident enough and competent enough to take the next step onto level 2. We need that in the industry desperately. There are, as I think I mentioned on the last podcast, we are so disjointed as an industry. We could pull ourselves to pieces without the help of any aunties. We really could, because we just don't put the whole picture together and pull as one. One part's pulling another. We've got the venison industry. We've got individuals that own venison businesses. We've got training industries. We've got individuals guiding people for money. We've got all those sectors are not pulling in the same direction, and we have to have a common goal and get towards that as quick as possible, so that, heaven forbid, whatever happens on Thursday or Friday or whatever the 4th of July is, we're in a better place to stand united and to say, actually, we've got this covered, and we can defend what we are saying with facts, not with hearsay, not with what we want, but with simple facts. And we're a rural community. We employ heaven knows how many people. We supply quality foodstuffs to the general public. We generate incomes. We are a viable resource, and that's what we have to prove in. Well, I think it's inevitable which way the electorate's going to go. All we can hope, I think, is that there isn't the vast majority which would allow them to impinge severely on our way of life. And I think that from the people I speak to, I think there's an awful lot of people who are a silent kind of majority, I hope, not a majority, but sadly minority, but that will kind of vote the right way and give us at least a say in how we go forward in this industry.
So in relation to the DSC2 itself, because you're both an accredited witness and an assessor, over, I don't know, the last couple of years or even 6 months or even the last 12 months, do you think there's been any change in terms of the number of people looking to do DSC2, or is it pretty much the same as it's always been?
If I have to be brutally honest with you, Tom, it's shocking. It's almost embarrassing. When I spoke to your assessor, we had a good long chat. I mean, the thing is, your stalk was very, very simple. It was textbook. Animal presented itself. It wasn't and I have to say this, it wasn't the most taxing stalk I've ever done on a level 2. It was relatively straightforward. When the whole thing just fell into place, it was kind of destined. It was a great stalk. You knew how to handle the carcass. You ticked the boxes. Easy for me. And when I go to the assessor with that information, he knows that everything's going to be hunky-dory, which was great. And we spent a lot more time on the phone talking about the state of the industry and how it's progressing, and the level 2 portfolio, or the level 2 accreditation as in particular. And we both had it. We both discussed the numbers of people who signed up for it, the numbers of people who actually completed it, the number of people who are hanging back and not taking or not getting on with doing it. And that, I think, is the real hiccup. It's what we alluded to earlier on. There are, I think, Paul, your assessor, had something like 60 candidates who are sitting there, signed up, money paid, not doing anything. And he asked me about you, and I said, well, Tom came to us in 2018, his level 2 or his level 1, sorry, and he said, why has he waited so long? And I said, well, I think he was just a bit, I'm not nervous, cagey isn't the right word, but just wanted to get himself into the industry, convince himself that he was of the right kind of ability to actually go forward and kind of finish it off. And I said it is refreshing to find somebody who is not kind of wish to blow smoke at your backside, but as accomplished and easy to deal with. The vast majority of candidates I've had over the years, you ask them, and I shouldn't say this because it's quite cruel, but when a candidate rings me or gets in touch with us and says, do you do levels 2, approved witness, can you help? One of the first things I'll say is, have you got your own ground? If they say no, I will automatically say, well, why do you need level 2? If you haven't got your own ground with deer on it that you have an excess of to supply into the food chain, why do you need level 2? I'm not wishing to put them off. I'm just wanting to strengthen the qualification to make sure they're not just gathering bits of paper. We have a very, very good client. He hasn't even got his farm certificate yet. He's been waiting 2 years. He's with West Mercia, and he's done his level 1. He's done the wild boar course. He's got his game meat hygiene assessment. He's never shot a deer. He's signed up with an approved witness who's mentoring him. He's taken him out 7 times at £120 an outing. He's never shot a deer yet.
What?
Yep. He stopped him from shooting several deer. He said to me the other day, what do I do? I said, get rid.
Yeah.
Why is he not letting you pull the trigger? The pulling the trigger is the easy part. I've stalked him to 50 meters from a fallow. Great. Why didn't you shoot it?
What was his answer?
He had none at all. He said, I don't know. I don't know why he hasn't let me shoot a deer. Get rid. Get some experience. Get it under your belt. So there are so many things in this whole scenario that are holding people back. If you need your level 2 qualification, either because you have an excess of animals and you need to put them into the food chain, or you genuinely need it for a syndicate place or a lease or something, get on and get it done, because it's not going to hang about.
And I think, to add to what you said, I waited so long between my DSC1 and DSC2 because I was in that very fortunate position that I got the hygiene certificate with my level 1 certificate. And so part of me was going, well, what's the point? Why do I need DSC2? But to go back to one of my earlier comments, I think I sort of I feel like I owe it to the industry to be as qualified as I can be and to demonstrate that to the wider public, to be honest. So that, and combined with, like I said, had I done my DSC2 a month after I'd done my DSC1, I'd have made a horrible mess of it. I can tell you that now.
Yeah, it goes back to what I said earlier on. We have people who've done level 1 and they're red hot keen, and I applaud that. I love it. I just wish they would carry that keenness through the years and grow into an effective stalker. I don't know if we said this on the last podcast, but when we have a level 1 course, we may have 10 or 12 candidates on that, and of those candidates, I can maybe pick one who will go on to become a keen, regular, and effective stalker. The rest are doing it for a bit of paper. They're doing it for some general knowledge, just to enhance their own kind of the learning experience, their own experience in the field, which I get. It's great, it's wonderful, but they're not becoming effective stalkers. They're becoming a true recreational stalker with which we have no beef whatsoever, but they are not the ones we need getting into the industry and making holes in deer numbers. And that's what I'm not saying level 2 is a requirement for that, but it gives us as an industry a far more robust argument when we are having to stand up and be counted. And I believe at some point in the next 5 years, we are going to have to really stand up and be counted. We've seen the countryside marches in the past. We've seen what happens when pressure is put on field sports. If Labour get in and get in with a large majority, then we are going to have more pressure than we've ever had before. They've got the impetus with what they did in Wales, or what they're talking about doing in Wales, to game shooting. If that spills over into England, we are in very, very dire straits. And stalking is a part of shooting, and it will come under pressure.
I I thought you were about to say that 1%, or sorry, 10%, as in one in every 10 people that does a DSC1 will go on to do DSC2. And I was about to be like, that's pretty high numbers. But actually, from what you just said, 10% go on to become kind of regular stalkers. So of that 10%, how many of that 10% do you think then go on to do DSC2? Because you must get a pretty good feel if you're doing however many 100 DSC1 candidates a year, how many of them are coming back and registering for DSC2?
Less than 1%.
And what do you think it is that holds people back? Is it the fear of the unknown? Is it the cost? Is it the I don't know.
I think this is where you and I spoke about and hoped that we could get over in these podcasts or videos or YouTube, whatever you're putting out there, is that level 2 is a very achievable qualification, and it's very hard to quantify. I mean, if you look at the numbers, there are about 3,500 level 2 stalkers in this country. There are 60,000 people who have either registered or done level 1. There's your numbers. Straight away, there's your numbers. Of those 3,500 people, you can probably write off half of them for level 2s that have been done in the pub by their mate who's an AW. And they've done 1 stalk, maybe 2, not the 3 that it used to be. So I think there's some inaccuracies in those people who've got level 2. I've certainly had supposed level 2 stalkers out or on the range, and they ain't fit for level 1, never mind level 2. The lack of knowledge and their skill sets are not what I would class as a level 2 stalker. Far be it from me to start laying down the guidelines and what have you, but they're clearly not. Which is why when we did your stalk with you, I could just sat there quite easy and just say, yeah, fine, carry on, Tom, because you could see from the first 5 minutes that it was going to be very, very straightforward. Yet I've had, for every one of you, I've had 20 or probably 30, maybe even 50 others. You walk 50 yards and you go, should we just go back to the car and have a coffee? Because you ain't seen the 3 animals I've just seen when we weren't allowed to point them out to you. Or they get to the point, they manage to shoot an animal, and then the gralloch is an absolute it's just carnage. And you just write it off and say, look, you need to go back to the drawing board here and think about what you're doing. Which is why I always ask people, how many animals have you actually shot? Why are you coming to me? Why do you need to come to me for my animals? You and I had a chat about this, and ordinarily I wouldn't do that, but we wanted to kind of stage it, I suppose, get a little bit of footage, if it were, and have something to talk about more. I had a couple of roebucks that I needed gone. You had less access to those. It worked. Ordinarily, I wouldn't do that. I would ask that individual, why do you need to come to me? How experienced are you actually? And I think in the last 18 months, 2 years, I've had quite a few inquiries. I've had a lot of inquiries, actually, the last 2 or 3 years. And when I've put them in that position, they've been more honest with themselves and said, well, I've shot 5 animals now. Well, 5 animals ain't going to do it. If I start asking you questions, and one of the issues, and I might be kind of go off tangent here, but when we changed the level 2 from 3 stalks to 1, there's an awful lot of talk about, we've dumbed it down a bit. I disagree. I strongly disagree. What we've done is we've put the emphasis on the assessor talking to the witness, and the witness being a little bit more out of the equation. Prior to, I've just had a new individual kill record update today. I haven't had a look through it tonight. I haven't had time. But again, that's updated. And going back several years, we had 20 or 30 pages to go through and tick boxes and answer quick questions to and ask you things about. We had to get you to demonstrate what you would do if you didn't injure, or if you did injure an animal, even if you'd shot the animal and it was cleanly killed. We had to then put you in a situation where you would demonstrate what you would do if you actually made a hash of things or got something wrong, or the animal moved, or and we don't do that anymore. But that is now assessor questioning. So we've put a bigger emphasis on the assessor questioning you more deeply, and the assessor rings the witness, gets a better feel of how the candidate performed, and it's all become a little bit more rigorous. So for those people who say, oh yeah, it's become 1 stalk now, it's dumbed it down, it really hasn't. And I know some of the assessors who we are using now, They are very, very senior guys, and I wouldn't want to be questioned by them, never mind somebody who doesn't know them. So we have upped the spec no end. But for the numbers are shocking. 3,500 people have done level 2, of which probably
Hang
2,000
on,
were.
3,500 total.
Yeah, the numbers.
In,
I'm not surmising, but I don't look at these figures every day. But if you go on the DMQ website, it'll show you how many people have done it, registered for it. Same thing with level 1, and the
you're
numbers
joking.
are wildly out.
So
Wildly out.
I've got two questions. The first one was as an assessor and as a witness, and I was going to ask in terms of what performance criteria is, but I won't because that won't mean anything to you. But if someone came to you and you were their witness, or if someone comes to you ultimately as an assessor, which areas is it that people are most likely to pass really easily, but also are the most common kind of failure points?
Right. Well, the good thing about one of the reasons why we took the game meat hygiene qualification, the train hunt status, out of level 1, are for these exact reasons. Because if you do level 2, or if you do a level 2 stalk, you're expected to know how to gralloch that animal, extract it, larder it, and present it as a fit carcass for the human food chain. That's the nub of it. At some point you're going to get lucky enough to shoot an animal. Somebody's going to stand there long enough, stupid enough for you to shoot it. Certain questions which we still ask now. So I could say to you, as one of the questions, what's your cull plan on this ground? And you could say, we don't have one. If it's safe in the season, we shoot it. We have a no deer policy. That's your cull plan. I can't question that. I can't go into that any further and say, yeah, but let's look at your roe bucks. Let's look at your roe population. Let's look at the number of fallow on the ground. I did a stalk for a guy a couple of years ago, and I asked him the very same question: what's your cull policy? And he said, we're going to shoot 10 fallow this year. And I said, how do you come up with 10 fallow? Well, we've seen a few around, and we know there's quite a few next door. So where do you get the figure of 10 from? Well, that's what the landowner wants. What relevance has a landowner, or what relevance does the landowner want to what is actually necessary? So we've taken that out of the equation and said, well, what's your cull policy? It can be as easy as, like I just said, if it's safe in the season, we shoot it. So there are things we've taken out of it, which I think are still important. But then your assessor can question on that. So if I write down your cull policy, and for your Sally waving in the background,
Sal waving.
When I spoke to you about our cull policy, well, I've managed on my bit of ground very, very strictly for a number of years. As far as I'm concerned, if it's a fallow and it's safe in season, I shoot it on the spot. Yes, I do have certain criteria. I don't shoot my bigger bucks. If I've got a choice, I will pick a better buck. I will pick, a poorer buck. I will pick a bigger pricket to leave. I'll pick a younger doe, whatever. Those criteria are individual to me. My roebucks, we talked about my roebucks on there, and I said anything below 6 points, I shoot because I want quality in there. The one you shot was a 6 point. It is a poor quality one. People may look at it and go, oh, I'd like that on the wall, but it's not what I want on the wall. So at the end of the day, that's my decision. And we talked about that the night before. It comes on to your other criteria. We've taken a lot of those out of the equation and allowed those to be asked by the assessor. And the key points to me are the gralloch. Can you gralloch effectively, cleanly, and efficiently? It's no good you taking 45 minutes to gralloch a deer. It really isn't. That shows a level of inexperience and lack of practice. I'm not saying everybody should rush you through in 2 to 3 minutes, but 5 to 10 minutes is enough, and the practices beforehand, the practices afterhand, those are what we're looking at. In my circumstances, I either lard the deer for my own consumption or consumption of 1 or 2 local individuals, so I can put it in my own chiller, or it goes straight to game dealer. So I don't have a larder, which puts the onus then on the stalker. And you have your own chiller, your own setup. So that area I have to tick a no box for, and the assessor will quiz you on anything that I've missed out. I've not seen what they've missed out or what they've taken out of the new ICRs, the individual cull records. There'll be something they've altered on there. I haven't had a look and had a chance to compare. But again, it's about strengthening the qualification. many years ago you couldn't do anything for the individual. You couldn't spot deer, you couldn't use thermals, and you were relying on the real skills of that one individual. And those are skills that, to a degree, aren't actually that relevant. And that's what it's about, relevancy. We look at the individual cull record, and providing that I can see as a witness that you can gralloch cleanly, efficiently, and quickly, you don't impinge on food safety in any way, shape, or form. It's not my job to quiz you about a larder unless we use a larder. Those are questions for your assessor, and the assessor will look at what I've written, look at what you've written, and see what is missing and question you accordingly. We don't need three stalks to do that. You don't take your driving test 3 times. Why take your level 2 assessment 3 times? You can either do it or you can't, and that's become very apparent. I don't know. As an assessor, I'm not privy to some of the information that I would like to be privy to. I don't know how many of the witness stalks get sent back and told to do another one or another 2 to get themselves up to speed. I don't know that, and I don't think I have any way of finding out. But we've got to start somewhere, and I think we want people to take level 2, which I think is part of the reason why we reduced it from 3 to 1 stalks, to make it a bit more appealing, because there was a cost issue for people. If they haven't got ground to stalk on, then they haven't got to pay somebody 3 times to go out stalking, which could become 9 times quite easily. If they're not successful, then it could quite easily mount up. But to stop people doing that in the first place, I'd always say to people, how many times or how many deer have you actually shot, and why haven't you got your own ground? Why are you doing level 2 in the first place? And I think we have to be so honest with ourselves as an industry, and take what DMQ have done with the qualification and use it sensibly and say, look, do you need level 2 or don't you? If you're shooting for your own consumption, go and enjoy deer stalking. Don't pretend to be a deer manager. Don't pretend to be an effective stalker. Enjoy your deer stalking. That's what you signed up for. Enjoy it. Enjoy venison. Give it to your family. You shouldn't give it to your friends, but you're going to. We know you are, but I hope they enjoy venison. If you're going to be effective and put numbers into the food chain, then get yourself signed up for level 2 and get it done sooner rather than later. Because I think long term, if we don't have that to stand on, then we're the ones that can protect the level 1s, I suppose. If we're level 2 stalkers and assessors and what have you, if we've got those, we can then turn around and say, well, we need these guys to help us do our job. We may be the effective stalkers and the effective deer managers out there doing that and getting numbers on the ground, but I need that guy shooting 5 over here and shooting 5 over there just to help me, if nothing else.
Yeah. And so, again, I've got so many different questions, but in terms of the fact that in some ways DSC2 has become what was DSC1 before, in terms of that bar seems to have kind of shuffled up slightly. Do you think therefore DMQ are potentially going to look at, say, a DSC3 or DSC2 Part B at some point, or do you think that's it, as it were? Do you think there'll come a need in the future for something else?
I can't say anything, but let me just run this by you. With your level 1, what colour badge do you get?
Bronze.
With your level 2, what colour badge do you get?
Silver.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a DSC3 on the way.
I'm not saying the DSC3 on the way. DSC3 hasn't been discussed, I can assure you now. There has always been the Advanced Deer Management qualification done by a couple of organisations, including BDS. And it's a good qualification. If you want to know about deer counts and what have you, it's a good qualification. BSC tentatively put their toe in the water with something similar recently and were hounded about it as usual. Oh, it's a money-making exercise. But at what point do we take that qualification level 2 further and say, okay, you got your level 2, that means you're an effective stalker. You can put together cull plans, you're an effective shot, you can deal with carcasses effectively. What is the next thing? What is required? And I think that is where the potential for something more robust is a reality. What is required by the industry to cement what we are doing now going forward to the next 5 to 10 years? Because I think the next 5 to 10 years are crucial in the deer industry. Game as a whole is up and down. We've got the new game processing unit at Cheveley, Oaklands Park. It's getting a lot of press at the minute. We knew about it many months ago, and it all sounds great, but we're still faced with that lack of empathy with what we do from the general public. And the lack of involvement with what we do, and the lack of eating venison, as simple as that. They're just still not doing it. You can dress it up how you want, they still ain't eating venison anywhere near enough to cope with the numbers of deer that we need to shoot. So we have to, as I mentioned on our previous podcast, we have to get together and just keep pushing this whole thing. And the only way we will get a lot of these potential issues past the general public is to show them that we are qualified to do this. The shooting part of it is a necessary evil, and if we can compartmentalize that and push it to one side into the corner and forget about it, if we can show them the biodiversity issues, we can show the management of the species, the better quality, the better health of the animals. If we can put that across as a better argument, a more cohesive argument, an easier, more simplistic argument, then we've got a better chance of keeping what we're doing actually live going forward. And level 2 is a tiny part in that. I think we have to be looking to the future, to where we need to be in 5-10 years time. It's no good sitting on level 2 and going, oh, that'll get us through. It'll get us through so far. It's got us through to where we are now. It won't get us over the next hurdle. I genuinely don't believe that.
And so, because DSC1, DSC2 are overseen by DMQ, Deer Management Qualifications, and DMQ, as far as I understand it, is a kind of amalgamation of representatives from lots of different walks of life, as in there'll be people on there from BASC, BDS and other places, and it's not an organization that belongs to any one of those organizations. So it would, if DMQ were to say bring out DSC3, it would be because of all of those bodies coming together and going, actually, yes, this is something we as the wider industry need, rather than one person going, this is my personal agenda.
Absolutely. And that is probably one of the biggest issues we face. These organizations will sit around a table with each other. They'll sit around a table with each other and they'll pay lip service to one another. And yeah, we think it's a great idea. And then they'll all walk out the meeting and go their separate ways, which is exactly what happened with level 1. The representatives from all the major organizations, so BDS, BASC, NGO, etc., sat on a table. They all have representatives on the board of DMQ, and they sat on a table and said, yeah, we're going to take out the level, the game meat hygiene status, the meat training hunter status out of level 1, make it into put it into level 2, and we go from there. That's how we're going to strengthen the industry, strengthen the qualification, and make level 1 not more basic, because that's not at all what we've done. We've made it more staged, as it were, level 1, then level 2, and then go on from there. And within 2 or 3 weeks, a couple of those organizations turned around and said, well, we'll do the Lantra course because we want to be able to offer the whole thing as we were doing before, and we'll charge 130 quid extra for it, or 140 quid extra, whatever it may be, as a bolt-on. And completely undid what we'd agreed to do. And it was only BASC who stood their ground and said, no, we're not doing that. We're going to wait until we've got a better course, something more robust, that is up to date, that comes in line with Food Standards Agency regulations and requirements. And when we've got that rubber stamped, we will launch it, and we will then add that on to level 1 if we need to. So we're undermining ourselves in the industry all the time. So how can we sit around a table, 4 or 5 organizations, and say, yeah, we'll all do this, we all agreed to it, and then we all leave the table and go our own ways afterwards anyway? It's nuts.
So, again, hypothetically, if there was going to be a DSC3, what do you think that is likely to entail? If you had, or actually turn that around the other way, if you were told tomorrow you've got to design DSC3, what would you put in it? Would you have it as a practical, a written, bit of both? What would you make it?
I think I'd certainly major on the practical, the actual getting it done. When we're looking at the populations we have to manage, we're not looking at vast numbers of roe deer. We're not looking at vast numbers of sika. Muntjac are a problem, fallow are a problem. So we look at those 2 problem species, and we design the course around those. So best management practices for large numbers of fallow, best management practices for large numbers of muntjac, and concentrate on those 2. And that will be practical skills. That will be staying ahead of the game. You know, how do you keep ahead of large numbers of fallow? How do you keep ahead of large numbers of muntjac? You know, measures to put in place for that. Handling should be in level 2. Extraction is in level 2. All those basics should be covered in level 2. We're looking at far, far, far more advanced mechanisms for a level 3. Collaboration, if nothing else, collaboration, working with your neighbours, deer management groups. And I don't think this needs to be done through level 3. I don't think there needs to be a level 3. I think what there needs to be is maybe an assessor-led program for whether it's regional, whether it's local, whatever it may be. You know, it may be Gloucestershire, Wiltshire, Oxfordshire, or I mean, Oxfordshire to divide it into 2 or 3. You know, and same thing. You know, North Oxfordshire, South, West, East. Divide it into areas where we have got effective level 2 stalkers who have provided information on the level 2 that shows and demonstrates they are effective stalkers. You know, in I remember when I put my level 2 portfolio in, I submitted a cull record, and you know, it's when you're allowed you had to supply all kind of manually. It wasn't done on a portfolio, and kind of my portfolio is like this thick because I put in a cull record of 2 estates and there's like 400 deer on there. And the guy said, why am I even ringing you, you know, to talk to you about cull records and what you do? He said, I've got it all here in front of me. And I said, well, this is the process what I've got to go through. But I think, you know, people like that who can engage and say, look, you know, there's numbers to be shot in this area. Let's take it, not nationally, but let's take it locally. Let's approach landowners and say, we can approach you as a deer management group. And deer management groups get a bad rap. You know, many years ago, we had the Cotswold Deer Management Group, and then we had a little sub-branch called the North Cotswold Deer Management Group. And, you know, the chairman of that was a client of ours. He said, what do you think I should be doing? I said, forget it. I said, you're going to get a lot of hangers on. You've got no stalking who want to come out and shoot your deer. And within 6 months, he wrote to me and said, that's exactly what I've got. You know, we need effective stalkers concentrated in an area where we can target local populations, reduce them significantly in a short space of time, and bring the numbers back into equilibrium. And I think we need to concentrate on that more than an advanced qualification. I don't think an advanced qualification is necessary, because people who are doing level 2 properly, or people who are level 2 stalkers who are managing deer effectively, are already capable of doing that. It may just mean we need to be targeting them in certain areas and certain locations, and assisting recreational stalkers, not suddenly taking ground off recreational, because that's not what deer management's about in reality. We're all looking, you know, to have some stalking. We're all looking to go out and shoot deer. I've got my little patch under control. I'm frequently asked to go out and help reduce numbers in certain areas, and sometimes I have the time, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I get asked to give some advice on how they will reduce, or how they could reduce those numbers. And one of the first things I say is, speak to your neighbours, speak to neighbouring stalkers. They may only shoot 10 deer a year. They may want to shoot more, but they haven't got them on their ground. But you've got them on your ground. Why not enlist their help? You know, why not get them up to speed? It was last year's Talking Stalker evening at Hartpury University. There's a talk there, and one of the presenters asked the kind of room how many people there would be, or how many stalkers there would be prepared to take a novice stalker under their wing and give them some guidance and help them get up to speed. And virtually everybody in the room put their hand up. The next question he asked was, how many of you would give up a bit of your ground to let them get a little bit further on? And there weren't any hands going up. And that, I think, is indicative of the industry we're in. You know, it's sharing. We don't, this industry has got to go away from this. This is mine. These are my deer. They're nobody's deer. You know, if you've got the shooting rights and you can't do the job, help somebody out. Give somebody a chance to come out with you. Get them up to speed. Get them experience so they can do the level 2. So they become a more effective stalker, a more experienced stalker. So that when we need to target these areas, we're not being told to do what we've got to do by the government. We don't need DEFRA saying you've got to shoot 500 deer off that land. We need to be able to be told we need to shoot more deer. Can you get that done for us? Yes, we can. These are what we think we need to be shot. They kind of correlate with your figures. Let's go and do it. We can enlist the help of some neighbouring estates, some effective stalkers. Let's get it done. And I think that's where we need to be focusing our efforts, not another qualification. You know, the qualification industry, I'm not going to say it's been done to death. It hasn't been done to death. You know, there are other organisations trying to capitalise on the income from stalking and from training. And The income from trading ain't great, I can assure you now. It's a vocation, as I mentioned on my last kind of chat with you guys. It's a vocation for us now. What we want to do is cement our kind of what we have in this industry, make it more robust, make it put it in a way we can't be knocked down. You know, we're not releasing birds. We're not releasing millions and millions of birds. You know, with disease risks. I'm not. I'm going to say this, and it's going to be a contentious issue, but I doubt there'll be very few listeners on here, you're rubbing your hands, who will disagree with me. Releasing of game birds for killing them is morally unjustifiable. I've been there. I've done it. I had 40 years. I had 20 years in the grain trade. I had 30 days a year in vites shooting. I loved it, but it's just we can't justify it, Tom. We really can't. Whereas we can justify what we're doing in the deer industry, but we have to make sure that we are morally fit and, you know, irreprehensible. I don't know if that's a word, but we have to make sure that we are seen to be doing what needs to be done, and we're doing it the right way. And the only way we can do that is if we have qualifications that are justified and that are recognized and show that we are doing it the right way.
I totally agree. And what a note to leave it on.
Cool.
I could keep going for hours, but I've looked up and noticed the time, and we've already been chatting for an hour, and I'm conscious you're sat outside enjoying a summer's evening and a glass of wine, and
summer. Which was that last week summer, or the summer we hope we're going to have in a month's time?
So both last week and the week, I mean, this isn't saying much actually, in fairness, because I was about to say both last week and the week before I managed to get sunburnt, but to be honest, it only has to get to about 20 degrees for me to get sunburnt. So actually, that's not saying that much about the great British weather, really, is it?
No, it's pretty rubbish, I'm afraid, at the minute. But no, I mean, Mondays, Tuesdays, we're off the range, so it's a Saturday, Sunday for us. So it's no bother. And I just want to get people engaging. We've had loads of comments about the podcast we did with you last time, some of the YouTube videos. It's clearly getting out there, and you know, free resources. You know, the old adage, "What do you get for free?" But you know, when you get a free resource and you get, you know, good topics of conversation on there, it's invaluable. It really is. And some of the people who are talking about level 2, I think there are more people now who are inquisitive about level 2. And every level 1 course we do, we get questions about level 2. You know, and I'm rehashing what we said earlier on, but you know, there's no reason not to do level 2, but get it into your head, get it for the right reason. Don't just sign up for it for fun, because you could end up time running out. And if you're in that situation, I would say you're the exception to the rule. You're one of the few people who have kind of got towards the end, the last 6 months of your registration, and you know, said, let's get this done, and being capable of doing it. The vast majority of those people in those situations get to the end of the registration and they're not capable of doing it because they haven't gone on from level 1 to become an effective stalker. You know, the first 2 to 5 months, or 2 to 6 months, sorry, are crucial, when people sign up and go, right, I'm ready, let's go. Done my level 1, done my level 2, job done. I would encourage more people to think about where they are in the industry and where their place is in the industry in the next 5 to 10 years. And if you're a recreational stalker, fine. Sit there with your level 1, you know, and wait for deer management groups to maybe put out the call to level 1 stalkers in the area. We need 10 level 1 stalkers on Saturday morning to come out and sit in high seats, be able to clearly identify fallow does, because that's what we need to shoot. We're going to do a deer movement day. There's no cost for this. We just need some guns on the ground. A shooting test to make sure you can shoot properly and shoot sensibly and safely is all that's required, plus your level 1. So that we don't have to inspect the carcasses. Ideally, you got your game meat hygiene certificate. I can see more structured events like that coming forward in the next few years, just to help us get some numbers on the ground. Not necessarily level 2, but your level 2 might be your kind of your coordinators, your dad's army, so to speak, your home guard, who will coordinate things. And then you may have an assessor in the area, somebody slightly higher up, who can say, right, I've got these 4 or 5 level 2 stalkers. We know what they can do. These are the guys that are controlling the ground. Let's coordinate the whole thing and make it happen.
I didn't think I'd reached an age where I could be referred to as Dad's Army yet, but there you go. I felt part of me die a little bit inside when, but there we go. I've made it.
It was just that analogy of, the kind of the level of command down, I suppose. You've got your assessors at the top, your Melchits and what have you, and then sending the troops into battle, your level 2 guys on the ground, and they've got 5 or 10 people with them doing level 1 stuff. It could work. I don't know. I'm surmising. This could be all kind of pie in the sky, but we've got some serious deer numbers, and we need to get them down real quick. Otherwise, it could be taken out of our hands, and that honestly is my biggest fear, that it's taken out of the hands of recreational legalized deer stalkers and shooters. And the last thing we need are controlled compulsory culls. Well, we've had them before in England and Wales. We've got them in Scotland, and that's the last thing we want. We want to be able to manage our own deer population above all anything else.
So there you go, everyone. If you needed more encouragement to get out, register for your DSC2 and get it done, you've just been given it. So thank you very much, Paul.
You're welcome.
I'm sure we will see you again because, as I said, your original podcast we did with you has been one of our most popular, along with the videos we did with you when we very kindly had us back to your range. So I'm sure this will be equally popular, and I'm sure we'll therefore be back in contact to scrounge some more favours off you in the future.
It's a pleasure. Honestly, I enjoy doing them. If it gets people thinking the right way, then it's got to be a good thing. And, as I said, it's a bit twee really, but, I'm of the age now where I'm putting back into the industry. I've had great times. I've had great fun in this industry. I've had the best of times. I wouldn't want to be going through it again. And if we can give some guidance to people who want to get on and do it, then that's what we're here for.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome. Catch you soon, boy.